history, we have been studying Vikings. Our big question was Vikings, ruthless killers or peaceful settlers?
Who were the Vikings and where did they come from?
The Vikings were pagans who believed in multiple gods. They came from small, isolated settlements in the fjords of Scandinavia, which is in modern-day Denmark, Sweden and Norway. They were known for their skills of navigating and trading with other civilizations.
I am Inga, and for most of the year I farmed the land around my homestead in the fjords of Denmark. It is hard work as the soil is sandy and the land is rocky, so we cannot produce a lot of crops. Because of this, I rely on other ways to provide for my clan. So, when the seas are clear and the fury of Thor is in our sails, I cross the perilous North Sea to go a Viking and raid.
How were the Vikings different from the Anglo-Saxons?
There were differences in their society, as Anglo-Saxons had 7 kingdoms: Northumbria, East Anglia, Wessex, Sussex, Essex, Kent, Mercia, while Vikings tended to live in smaller isolated settlements.
Differences between the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings were the Anglo-Saxons were Christian, however the Vikings were pagans, which meant they worshipped more than one god. For example, Loki, Odin and Freya.
However, they had shared history as a tribe of Anglo-Saxons called the Jutes came from southern Scandinavia.
What conflict occurred between the Norse and the Anglo-Saxons?
Lots of conflict between the two groups, including the raid of Lindisfarne in 793 AD, the invasion of East Anglia in 865 AD, invaded by the Great Heathen Army, and the Battle of Edington in 878 AD.
The Anglo-Saxons spent quite a lot of time fighting amongst themselves when they were creating their kingdoms. But when the Vikings tried taking more of their land, they became fiercely protective of it. They famously raided the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793 AD and left no survivors.
Behold, the Church of St. Cuthbert, spared with the blood of the priests of God, despoiled of all its ornaments. A place more venerable than all in Britain is given as a prey to pagan peoples.
Why did they choose to invade Britain?
They invaded Britain because they had rich land for agriculture and rich resources for plunder such as gold and silver.
What evidence do we have of their intentions to settle?
Evidence of their intentions to settle can be seen in the fact that they made York their kingdom and did not destroy it.
In 865, the Vikings sent a force which was much larger than any force they'd sent before, with around 3,000 fighters. This was called the Great Heathen Army.
This signaled to the Vikings to stay in Britain and not just raid and leave.
By 867 AD, the Great Heathen Army had managed to capture York, which was a very valuable town. It was well connected and had lots of trade. This meant the Vikings could supply themselves with goods and warriors.
They stayed for trade and agriculture and left their mark in our language as words like husband, happy, window and slaughter are all Norse.
What evidence do we have of their brutality?
The Vikings raided Lindisfarne in 793 AD and killed all monks. They are known from killing kings in Anglo-Saxon Britain. They also killed Alfred's brothers in 871 AD, forcing him to be king.
He was fourth in line to the throne of Wessex and only inherited after all 3 of his brothers died or were killed by Vikings.
By 871, the Vikings headed south to take on the kingdom of Wessex, which was very powerful.
They traded blows with each other. The king of Wessex at this point was someone called Alfred the Great.
Alfred the Great, he wasn't known as the Great until a few hundred years later, was the king of Wessex from 871 AD until 886 AD, and then became the king of all Anglo-Saxons from 886 AD until 899 AD.
Although Alfred couldn't defeat the Vikings at this point, it is thought that he paid them to stop attacking.
The Heathen army had split in half in 874 to go elsewhere, but unfortunately for Alfred, the Vikings broke their promise and having them attack a place called Chittenden in 878. And most of the people they killed, except the king, Alfred, and he with a little band made his way by wood and swamp. And after Easter, he made a fort in Athelney at the marches of Sunset, and from that fort kept fighting against the foe.
Alfred and a small group then hid from the Vikings until
until they gathered enough support to attack them at a place called Edington.
For Odin and for all the gods in Valhalla.
And forced the Viking leader Guthrum not only to stop attacking, but also to become a Christian. He then set up something called the Danelaw. After the Battle of Edington, Alfred used his power to make changes to the army and also made education a priority. He said his top advisors should be able to read and write in Latin.
Alfred, the Great Heathen army looked pretty menacing. How many soldiers do you think were in it and where did they go?
Reports say there were about 3,000 fighters and they were heading up north to York.
Why would they try and take over York?
Well, it's a well-established city which is vital for trading. Lots of supplies and people which go through there so they can keep themselves well stocked.
I say, so what happened after they took York?
They headed back south again and marched on Wessex, but my army managed to push them back. Forced Guthrum to convert to Christianity. Hopefully now we can have peace.
Athelstan, that great heathen army looked pretty menacing but couldn't go the distance in the end. How do you feel?
Those men who have fallen will now be celebrating in Valhalla. They died warriors.
But won't that change now you're Christian?
Well, not all my men have chose to convert. I'll give them time to change their pagan ways.
So what will you do now?
We shall return north to our new home of Danelaw, where we build strength. Perhaps one day we will go back to Wessex.
The Danelaw was set up to clearly mark out the lines between the Vikings and the rest of the country. The Vikings were allowed to have their own customs and rule however they liked, so long as they didn't attack across the boundaries anymore.